My grandfather built his farm with his own two hands, 70 acres, fully paid off, no loans, no debt. And when he passed away, he left it all to me, the only grandchild who ever truly stayed close to him. But within 2 years of his death, an HOA I had never even heard of had drained $450,000 from his estate. And then I discovered what they had been secretly constructing on his land while nobody was paying attention. Before we go further, I need to know where you're watching from right now. Seriously, drop your country in the comments. I read every single one, and you'd be surprised how many people are going through something just like this story. All right, let's go back to the start. My grandfather, Earl Hutchkins, wasn't a complicated man. He woke up at 5 in the morning, fed his animals, worked the land until sunset, and went to bed with peace in his mind. He owned 72 acres in rural Tennessee. Good soil, flat ground, the kind of property developers immediately see as profit. But Earl never cared about money or development. He cared about leaving something real behind for family. When he died in the fall of 2019, I was 26 years old. I inherited the land, the small farmhouse, a tractor that barely ran, and what I believe was a clean, undisputed title. I moved onto the property, started learning farming from scratch, and tried to continue what he had built. I had no idea his death had already triggered something, and someone else had been waiting for that moment the entire time. About 3 months after moving in, I received a letter. It looked official, complete with a logo from the Ridgeline Community Association. They claimed my property fell under their jurisdiction. They said my grandfather had signed their covenants back in 2011, and now I owed 7 years of back dues, $11,000 total. Pay within 30 days or face penalties. I almost laughed. I had never even heard of this association. My grandfather never once mentioned anything like it. I called the number on the letter. A woman named Sandra answered, polite, but in that cold, scripted way that immediately puts you on edge. She told me the charges were valid, the covenants were binding, and if I didn't pay, they would place a lien on the property. I told her I would look into it. She replied, and I quote, "I suggest you do that quickly." I went straight to the county records office, and that's when things started to feel off. The covenants they referenced, supposedly signed by my grandfather, were filed under a subdivision I had never heard of. Somehow, 72 acres of farmland that had existed long before any of this were quietly folded into that subdivision on paper. The signature on the document didn't even look like my grandfather's handwriting. But that wasn't the worst part. When I compared their property maps with my actual deed, nothing matched, not even close. They were off by nearly 18 acres along the eastern edge of the land. 18 acres I never paid attention to because it was mostly dense tree line and marsh. 18 acres I had never once walked until that day. I put on my boots, grabbed my truck keys, and drove to the far edge of the property. And when I pushed through the tree line, I froze. There was a road, a paved road, and beyond it, a resort, an actual resort with a lodge, a swimming pool, rental cabins, and a sign that read, Ridgeline Nature Retreat, private members only, and every single cabin, every structure, every inch of paved road was sitting on land that, according to my deed, still belonged to me. Let that sink in for a second. While the HOA was billing me for fake dues and threatening liens on my grandfather's farm, they had already built a luxury resort on his land and were charging people to stay there. I called a real estate attorney that same afternoon. His name was Marcus Webb. And the moment I explained everything, the deed, the coordinates, the photos I had taken, he went completely silent. Then he asked, "How fast can you get me certified copies of everything?" That was the beginning of a 14-month legal war, and what we uncovered during discovery changed everything. The Ridgeline Community Association had actually been formed in 2009 by 3 men, 2 of them local, real estate developers, along with 1 former county zoning official. Together, they had quietly expanded their control by annexing surrounding properties through forged and backdated agreements. My grandfather wasn't the only one caught in it. There were 11 other landowners involved, most of them elderly, several already deceased. Their heirs had no idea any of these documents even existed. The resort had been running for 4 years straight. It was bringing in nearly $800,000 a year in revenue, and not a single dollar of that money went to the families whose land it was built on. Marcus immediately filed an emergency injunction to shut down resort operations. The judge approved it within 48 hours. And that's when something completely unexpected happened. One of the 3 founders cracked. His name was Gary Pittman. And the moment he realized the legal consequences were real, he walked straight into the district attorney's office carrying a flash drive. What was on it changed everything. Forged signatures, fraudulent land filings, and emails between the founders openly discussing how to target recently deceased landowners because their heirs would have no idea what to check for. They even had a list. My grandfather's name was on it. Next it was a note. Farm, no surviving spouse, 1 grandchild, out of state, low risk. When I read that line in the deposition files, I had to step away from everything. The trial lasted 9 days. The 2 remaining founders, both backed by high-priced attorneys and wearing tailored suits, sat at that defense table looking untouchable for the first 6 days. Then Marcus started presenting the emails, one after another. The jury sat there reading conversations that had no innocent explanation. You could literally see the shift happen, the exact moment doubt turned into certainty. It was on day 7. I watched it unfold in real time. The verdict came back on a Thursday afternoon. Fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, every single charge guilty. Both men were convicted on all counts. But what happened next is what nobody saw coming. During sentencing, the judge ordered full restitution for all 12 affected families. For my family alone, that meant the $450,000 that the HOA had taken from my grandfather's estate, plus 4 years of resort profits tied to our land, plus additional damages. In total, it came to just over $1.2 million. $1.2 million tied to a farm my grandfather built with his own hands. Land that almost slipped away because someone assumed a young heir from out of town wouldn't understand what was happening. But here's the part that still sits with me. The part one can't forget. Gary Pittman, the one who flipped and testified, got a reduced sentence. He served 14 months and walked free. The other 2 are still in prison. But Gary, he moved 2 states away. And from what I've heard, he started another property management company. So ask yourself this. How many people are getting letters from HOAs they've never even heard of? How many families with recently deceased parents are receiving official-looking demands for money they don't actually owe? How many just pay it because it feels easier than fighting it, never realizing what's really happening? I kept the farm. I restored the farmhouse. And every morning at 5 a.m., I think about my grandfather. He left me something real. And someone tried very hard to take it. They just picked the wrong person. If this story hit you, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you or someone you know has ever dealt with an HOA pulling something shady, you might be closer to this kind of story than you think.